Frame hold photography.
Photo mode has been a feature in the Assassin's Creed series ever since the release of Assassin's Creed Origins in 2017. With every subsequent release, photo mode has gotten more robust with additional settings that allow players to truly take control of the images they capture. Taking pictures in photo mode is a lot like real-world photography, and understanding photography terms can help you take better photos in-game. All of the settings you can adjust in photo mode can drastically affect your image, which is why it is important to understand what each setting does and how they can work together. In this video, I will give an in-depth description of what each setting changes. While my examples focus on the photo mode present in Assassin's Creed, these terms are unanimous across photo modes in all video games. So, let's get started. While playing any Assassin's Creed game from Origins to Mirage, you can activate photo mode by either clicking in both controller sticks on console or hitting F3 on PC. This will launch composition mode, where you can freely move the camera around and frame your subject. For more information on how to frame your shots, check out my framing tips and tricks video, linked in the description below. Once you have properly framed your subject, click in the left stick or the left mouse button to enter edit mode. In edit mode, you will find 10 settings you can adjust. Let's dive into what each setting means. The term depth of field refers to the region between the closest and farthest elements in the frame that appear in focus. The cursor that you can move around in photo mode tells the camera where the focus point is, or rather, what part of the image you want to be clear and sharp. As you move farther away from this focus point, whether towards the camera or away from it, the objects in the scene will become progressively blurrier. Depth of field can be divided into two main categories: shallow and deep. A shallow depth of field is one where only a small portion of the image is in focus, and the rest is very blurry. A deep depth of field is one where nearly everything is in focus. Knowing this, you can make conscious creative decisions when taking photos. If you want to take a moody portrait or focus in on small elements and details, a shallow depth of field would serve you well, whereas sweeping landscape shots benefit from everything being in focus, using a deep depth of field. Exposure refers to how bright or dark your image appears. In real-world photography, exposure refers to how much light reaches your camera's sensor. Changing the exposure of your image can greatly affect the look and mood of your capture. Lowering it can create very dark and moody captures, while raising it can create very bright and sunny captures. I wouldn't recommend drastically changing your exposure, since too low of a value can muddy details in darker parts of an image, and too high of a value will make your image look bland and washed out. Contrast is the difference between the brightest highlights and the darkest shadows of your photo. High contrast images create a punchier effect, since the difference between your brightest and darkest colors is greatly emphasized. Low contrast images appear very flat and washed out, since the difference between your highlights and shadows is very small. Changing your exposure and contrast settings can work hand in hand. For example, if you want a stronger contrast in your image without losing details in your darkest values, you would first increase your contrast and then increase your exposure to counterbalance this change. The temperature setting refers to color temperature, which is the warmth or coolness of light in the image. In real-world photography, color temperature is measured in Kelvin, and can be thought of as a spectrum from orange to blue. These values work inversely of each other. So, if an image looks too blue, you could add more orange or warmth to it to balance it out, and vice versa. Balancing the color of an image to make it look truer to life without a distinct color tint is known as white balancing. Like temperature, tint is another camera setting that can help balance the color of an image or add color casts. Tint can be thought of as a spectrum from green to magenta. These values also work inversely of each other. So, if an image looks too green, you could add magenta to it to white balance the image. Saturation refers to the intensity of color in your photo. High saturation means your image is very colorful, whereas low saturation will make your image black and white. Changing the saturation can also have a strong effect on the emotions conveyed by your capture. A sad scene could be further conveyed through low saturation, where the colors of the world feel muted. A whimsical landscape shot showing off the beauty of the world will look livelier and more interesting with higher saturation. In real-world photography, every image has some level of noise, or visual grain, present within the image. With no image present, noise looks like this. Noise is primarily caused by allowing more light to hit the camera sensor for longer periods of time. In virtual photography, there is no noise present unless you choose to add it in. In my opinion, I always like adding a bit of noise into my photos to make them feel like they were captured with a real camera. A low value from 1 to 10 is what I usually go with, just to give the image a bit more texture. By increasing the vignette value in photo mode, you can add a dark border around the edges of your image. By adding a vignette, you subtly draw the viewer's eye to the center of the image, since the details on the edges of the frame are darkened. I find this setting is handy when it comes to portraits, since you want the focus of your photo to be on the character. Adjusting the bloom setting affects the highlights of your image. The higher the value, the more overexposed your highlights become, creating a blurry atmospheric effect around them. Increasing the bloom of your image can add emphasis to highlights dotting armor or weapons, or the warm glow of the sun. Not every image needs the bloom adjusted, but knowing what this setting does can help you make conscious decisions of when you would like to draw attention to the brighter parts of your image. This setting is pretty self-explanatory. Increasing the fog value will increase the amount of atmospheric fog rendered into the game. Like bloom, this setting does not need to be adjusted for every photo, since not every capture needs to have a foggy environment. However, increasing the fog value can have cool effects that make characters feel mysterious, locations feel mystical, and battles feel smoky. While it is easy to think of zooming in and out of photo mode as changing how close or far away you are from a subject, what you are really changing is your focal length. In photography, focal length is the distance between the camera sensor and where light meets the inside of a lens. Different focal lengths create different angles of view. Shorter lenses, like 17mm lenses, have a wide angle of view, whereas longer lenses, like 200mm lenses, have a narrow angle of view. When you use the zoom feature in photo mode, what you are actually doing is changing the focal length of the virtual camera, meaning you are either creating a wider or narrower angle of view. Knowing this, you can use different focal lengths to your advantage to create different effects. For example, take a look at this chart, showing how different focal lengths greatly change how a person looks in a portrait. Shorter focal lengths can make a person look a bit weird and bulbous, whereas longer focal lengths make people look more natural and a bit flatter. This is why zooming in, or using a long focal length when using photo mode, is best when taking portrait shots. If you want to emphasize the length of a sword or the height of a cliff, zooming out, or creating a shorter focal length, can distort the image to make the distances look more drastic. With all of the main settings covered in photo mode, you are now ready to start taking some awesome pictures. My top advice is to have fun, take a lot of photos, and experiment with the settings you use. Feel free to share your photos with me on Twitter or Instagram. Links to my profiles are in the description. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or DM me on socials. I am always happy to help. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.